This is John Musgrave. Thanks for clicking on the podcast. If you like this content or like this episode, please click the like button or even subscribe. Thanks very much.
Second reason you'll suffer, B, because you are the smell of death. You are the smell of death to those who are perishing. Bob read for us 2 Corinthians 2, verses 15 and 16. Paul had seen this as he's writing 2 Corinthians in about AD 56, 57-ish. He's writing this, and he's talking about his experience as he goes around. And he says, we're the aroma of Christ to God. But to those who are being saved, we're the fragrance of Christ. We smell like flowers that we like to smell, not flowers that are too strong. And we're a good fragrance. But to those who are perishing, we are the smell of death. And so we walk into a room and other Christians are encouraged because they smell the fragrance of life and they say, someone with life is here, right? Like Darth Vader. I sense the force around me. Someone has walked in with the force. My Obi-Wan's here. I know it. But to those who are perishing, we come in and it's like a smell of death. I've told some of you, I had a paper route for 3 months along North Sandusky Street in Delaware, Ohio. And my friend David Holm had the route before me. And so when we traded off paper routes, you went around with your previous paper route guy for 3 days. And so I went around with him for 3 days and he showed me each house to put, throw a paper into. And there was this one house just north of Sandusky Street in Central, across from the library. And you had to open the door, and then there were stairs that went up, like any of you who know my first office on Main Street. It was just like that. You opened the door and you went up these stairs. And you went up the stairs, and then there was a big long hallway, and there were apartment doors on your left and right. Maybe 2, 3 on the right, 2, 3 on the left. And the apartment that got the paper was the third one on the right. And he said, just sling the paper down there. You folded them and rubber banded them. Just sling it down there. And he said, and you don't want to walk down this hallway because when we went into this hallway, it stunk. And he explained to me on that first day, someone had died in one of those apartments who was by him or herself. And they discovered that person because the smell of death came. If you've ever been along, a road and the window's open, you know when a deer has died and no one's picked it up. Death doesn't smell good. There's a certain smell to death. Now, that person wasn't still in the apartment, by the way. But the smell was. The O did not leave with the B. Seinfeld fans there. But the smell of death. And so we come into the room and people say, oh no. So 2 Corinthians 2:15, for we are to God the aroma of Christ among those who are being saved and those who are perishing. To the one, we're the smell of death. This means, your next line there, when you walk into a room, you are a reminder to unbelievers of what they know. You are a reminder to unbelievers of what they know and don't want to be reminded of. My family, we've taken a little bit of a break because Mallory's not a huge fan, but when I was in college, I was an English major, and my favorite class in all my English classes was a class called British Novel. And so we read the Jane Austen stuff, Thomas Hardy, those kind of things, the heyday of British novels, the stuff that you see get put into film and TV today. So we've been watching a bunch of that stuff, and Mallory's like, it's okay, but I'm not a big fan, so we watched Star Trek the other night instead. But we watched a Dickens series from BBC, maybe like 5 episodes, that I'd never heard of. It was called Little Dorrit. Really good on BBC, Little Dorrit, and it's about this little Dorrit. It's the daughter of a man who goes to debtor's prison. Something's happened. You don't know exactly what it was, but he was formerly a person of means, but he has some bad investment or something like that, and he goes into debt. In those days, 1800s England, you went to debtor's prison. But it was a crazy solution because then you couldn't work, and you couldn't work off your debt. And so you were in debtor's prison for the rest of your life. And in this debtor's prison, and I think I read Charles Dickens' dad was actually in this exact prison for a while and somehow got out. But your family could live with you. And they could go in and out. And there was like a courtyard. And they could go in and out. But you yourself, who was in debt, so Little Dorrit's dad, William Dorrit, could never leave. And he was greatly ashamed and greatly embarrassed by this. And his life became kind of pitiful. He didn't know it. The people around it kind of recognized it, but no one would say anything to him about it because he was kind of almost insane by this, by the station of his life just changing that much. But then it's found out that, sorry, I'm going to ruin a little bit of this for you, that he actually is the heir of much wealth. And so he gets out of debtor's prison. But then when he gets out of debtor's prison, he allows no one around him to remind him that he was ever in, what was the name of that prison? Seafarers or something like that. That debtor's prison. And it's just like not in reality. He doesn't want any reminder that he lived that life for 25 years in debtor's prison. And that's what non-believers are like when we walk into the room. They don't want to be reminded of these things that they know. Now what do they know? First thing, and it's there on your thing. They know God exists. And non-believers don't want to be reminded that God exists because there are implications with that. And so we saw that when Bob read to us in Romans 1:19-21. Listen to this, what Paul writes. Since what may be known about God, he's talking about unbelievers, what may be known about God is plain to them. It's not they can discover it if they read the Bible. Now that would be true too. It's not they could discover it if they really think about it and get philosophical, something can't come from nothing and all that. No, it's plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For here's how. Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that they are without excuse. Paul teaches us, you see this in Philippians, wrong P book, Psalm 19 as well. Psalm 19, that the human being is wired so that when we see creation, I'm looking at pine trees. When you see pine trees, when you see blue sky, when you see clouds, we are hardwired to connect that with God has created this. So atheism is learned. We naturally, even in our unbelieving state, know God exists. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them, it has been clearly seen through the creation, being understood through what has been made, so that men are without excuse. No one will arrive before Jesus at final judgment and say, well, I didn't know you even existed. Because they did. They knew it. But they suppressed that truth within them. And when you walk into the room around a non-believer, if they know you're a Christian, you're giving them a hard time suppressing that truth, like William Dorrit, that he was once in debtor's prison and brought to a place of tremendous humiliation. And so you walk in and you make it hard for them to suppress the truth. They want to surround themselves with non-believers so that they're not reminded of the fact, by the presence of believers, that God exists. And that they know that in their hearts when they see a tree, when they feel the breeze. So you're the smell of death to them. You're a reminder to them that God exists. Here's what Psalm 19 says, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God. Someone looks above the heavens and it's declaring God's glory. And a person looks at that and they have to suppress that God exists. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they display the knowledge of him. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. So it's not limited to a culture or a society or a nation that has gospel proclamation. That is, the existence of God is not limited. There's no speech or language where it's not heard. everyone all over the earth, North Pole, South Pole, everywhere, is hearing this speech coming from the heavens above, from the clouds, from the trees, from the grass, from the dirt, from the rocks, from the mountains, from the seas. It's speech that's communicating to their souls, and it goes across and into every nation and every culture. The existence of God is being spoken, it's being spewed out on everybody every day. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the end of the world. So Romans 1:21, for although they knew God, unbelievers, they neither glorified him as God nor gave him thanks. And so you showing up before unbelievers, especially if you've talked about your faith in Christ, or even if your demeanor is just different, you're a reminder to them of what they know to be true, but are suppressing, that God exists. Your life and belief of Christ are a reminder to them and a smell, an aroma, a smell of their impending meeting with God, whom they're not giving thanks, who's provided them for every good thing they've experienced. And they'll have to stand before God and say, I never gave you thanks for anything, except when I used your name in vain and said, thank God. We say that and we mean it. They say it and they're taking the Lord's name in vain, mostly. Our old church building, I don't take that route as much as I can. It's the smell of death to me. So many bad memories, so much pain, right? Sometimes I have to go by through there. Boy, I was glad when my kids were done at Corinth Holders, because I had to pass that building all the time. I hate when I have to go to the dentist, because I go to Rick Benny over by Boba Beans. I have to pass that building. It's the smell of death. And that's what, and that building to me is like a Christian to the non-Christian. It's a reminder of things they don't want to be reminded of. Now, number two,